This is a love song. I am birthing woman, birthing woman. I am a million years of words, unwritten, hidden. I am ancient breath. I am your birth. I am your death. I speak with body, not with tongue, for this is how her story's sung. With knees bent deep and spread wide, I lean back between her angel thighs and hear the empathetic sighs of sisters since the start of time, alive. The full moon of my belly descends whilst you navigate the spiral seas towards me. Like softly splitting wood, the hood lifts and my clitoris is the gateway. Pomegranate lips peel back to reveal the fresh fig top of your crown. Secret smile, open, round, bulging. Full ripe seed swells from within, pushing. I stretch a mile wide, inside out. Cavernous mouth surrounds wet warm mound, soft like ripe peach as I reach down into the space between, unseen, to draw you out. We are two vessels afloat on heaving tide. Our guide an earthly tone, the low moan anchor of my birth song, our love song calls us home. Bass drum gushing, deep hum rising. I am birthing woman, birthing woman. I am birthing, you are birthing me. We are birthing me as woman. Our syncopated hearts beat as we breathe on the edge of this beginning. We have been here before, riding on the crest of a red wave as it crashes into shore, and your slippery form swims into your father's hands. Suddenly one becomes two, becomes three, as we meet for the first time. We are newborn, mother, father, child, and you climb up ancient line towards my breast, wise eyes and familiar mouth, seeking sweet liquid love flows between us, along pulsing, intertwined lifeline, our bloodline, and we are outside of time. We have arrived floating upon a river of milk and blood, and we are in love. Is how closely grief and joy sit together, and how closely life and death sit together, and just really feeling that line. After my daughter was born, I had a very serious condition called eclampsia, and this poem is written about the next day to that poem. I should probably say it took me 8 years to write this poem because I did have PTSD and I went through a really big process to get support for that. So this is whole. There was the candlelight and the birth pool and the groundswell groan and the baby on the breast and the feeling that we'd made it. There was the searing pain beneath the ribs and the blood in the sink and the headache and the hope it would be better in the morning. There was the sunlight and the baby and us in the living room, still bright with birth and beginnings. There was the feeling I was disappearing and the blue orbs tumbling towards eyes, rolled back, body tonic, clonic, and the baby beside me and him suspended between two futures. There were the neighbours and the urgent calls and the paramedics and the blue lights and the bumpy track and the siren. There was me on a trolley, 36,000 feet deep, 6.9 miles of water overhead on the deep blue sea bed, where unimaginable creatures dwelled. There was the darkness and the absence and the void and nothingness. There were my cradle arms empty and the doctors that tapped on my kneecaps to see if anyone was home. There were hurried feet along rabbit warren corridors and locked doors, and the grandparents peering in through wire grid glass, thinking the unthinkable. There were the concerned whispers and the wet eyes and the white knuckles of hands holding on to curled fingers in a tangle of tubes. There were the rows of unusually still toes, making tents out of sheets, and the beeps and busy backs between blue curtain cracks, and the sound as they swished along the tracks, and the rasping seashell inhale of the deep sea diver's breath in the bay next to me. Shoot, shoot, shoot. And the tick, tick, tick of the mocking clock in a world where day and night merge in timeless half-light. There was the baby, 24 hours new, on his lap, sat upright on straight-backed seat in fluorescent strip light, and the friend with full milky breasts quietly arriving through softly open door with knowing looks and salty stream cheeks and dripping nipples, and my baby in her arms, nuzzling and guzzling and settling. There was him on the awkward single bed, waking up surprised to find a small creature curled upon his chest, making bird mouth movements, and the tiny cup of expressed milk and the teaspoon on the bedside cabinet. There was the place upstairs where each room housed an everyday miracle, pink and blue teddy bears and box fresh baby grows dangling off tiny still furled feet, and skin on soft skin, and tea and toast and gentle smiles. 5 floors down. There was the feeling of being alone, and my gnarled wood neck on fire in knots, propped up against bleached cotton and plastic, wires and surgical tape and support stockings, and the bag of golden piss hanging off the bed, and the mystery of the catheter in my urethra. There was the feeling of being seen naked by strangers when I was absent, and the blank space between then and now, and the not knowing, and the fog, and my cradle arms still empty. There was the first shower, looking down at my feet and watching the water dripping off my pubes for the first time in months, and the dark lines still whispering up my withered abdomen, deflated and soft like warm liver or jelly or a sea slug, and the blood in the plug, and the blue fracture crack veins across my boulder breasts bursting. There was the baby back in my arms, and the visitors, and the rainbow over Brighton Beach through the 12th floor window, and the mist, and still the feeling of being alone. There was no fanfare to welcome me back, to celebrate my escape from the underworld. No being carried above heads along crowd-lined streets and people bowing awestruck at my heavenly feet. There was no ceremonial opening of the eyes, where everyone embraced and cried tears of relief whilst a soft piano played. No, there was nothing like that. Just a slow, unremarkable emergence into the dewdrop fog of early motherhood, and a hole to be filled in at a later date. The straw that broke the camel's back. It was the car seat that did it. The straw that broke the proverbial camel's back. The grapple with the safety strap that finally made her crack. It was the car seat that did it, the awkward twist of her torso as she crouched behind the spring-loaded seat of the 3-door hatchback, and the damp, warm closeness of the cloth face mask, and the feeling and the stifling fur hood of her parka, and the feeling that she couldn't breathe, and the tightness in her chest. It was the car seat that did it. The impossible clip on the 5-point harness slipping from her grip against the writhing, rear-facing protest, and the uninvited slap of a chubby palm on her heat-flustered cheek. and the rotten core of an apple stuck in the plastic crevices. It was the car seat that did it, not the 100th night of interrupted sleep, or the shitty pants, or the relentless cycle of cook, eat, clean, not the feeling of never being heard or seen, nor the late night lamentations on what might have been. It was the car seat that did it. It seemed so out of the blue. No one could understand how she could do such a thing. 2 kids in a supermarket car park, alone. Car door wide open. Keys in the ignition. Somebody said they saw her walking away. She didn't look back, not once. Just a WhatsApp to the dad. You forgot to swap the car seats. This is a poem for a dear friend of mine called Colette. She was a sexual health and female pleasure activist, and her alter ego was Lady Cunt. A place by the sea. There was heat and life muffled through the sealed window. Your willow-thin frame, now a whisper of your fullness. I drew the wet, soapy cloth down your arm, over the divine hag, legs spread in a wide smile, etched in red ink on the inside of your rebel wrist. Then around each one of your applewood fingers, noticing the length and the curve of your nails. I lifted your vest and swept past your chest, where your left breast had eaten itself, the skin now a fetid opening, shameless and exposing, a raw testament to your uninvited visitor, concealed beneath a layer of bandage and gauze. I wiped across the corrugated ridges of your ribs, as a small bird beat her wings within your costal cage. I followed the tracks of 1,000 kisses across the jagged peaks of your hips, the full moon of your belly, a concave crater, once plump pelvic bowl overflowing with life, now hollow home to your sleeping womb. I traversed the landscape of your form, down and over the sacred hill of your Venus mound, a place you had reclaimed and named your cunt, then around the lips of your vulva, that just 2 years before had been a singing gateway for your son. Such searing intimacy, it felt almost too much, if it hadn't reminded me of a mother's touch, of bathing my newborn for the very first time. The reverence, the responsibility, the tenderness, the aching beauty of us both laid bare. I travelled along your whalebone thighs to the tip of your slender feet and thought of the leopard print leggings that you loved to wear, even then. I ran the cloth across your forehead, pushing back the edges of your cropped hair, once waist-length waves of chestnut brown, and saw the shaved patch by your temple where they'd cut you open. I moved the toothbrush inside your mouth, and you looked into me then, or through me. I couldn't tell. I wanted to say something funny or profound, or both, but any sound other than the tide of our breath and the toothbrush and the water dripping off the cloth felt too loud. I wanted to hold you close, to hear you say, I'm ready. I wanted to cry with you at the injustice, to howl with you in grief beneath the full in-bulk moon, like that time at Bridget's Well in Kildare. I wanted to let you go, but you had big plans for a place by the sea and recovery. So I shed my tears alone in the corridor, up against the wall, and wept at the fucking tragedy of it all, knowing that the closest you would get to the sea was that hour we spent with your beloved and your boy outside the hospital in the sun, and the flow and ebb of the salt water beneath your paper-thin skin. I've been trying to write this one for a few weeks because I just love the title. So I started with the title, and here we go. Caterpillar Soup. Your life will change forever, they said. It's transformational. I imagined myself like a butterfly emerging from her cocoon, babe in arms in full bloom, effortless and full of grace in that place called motherhood. But what they didn't tell me was that first I would be a pupa, neither caterpillar nor butterfly, wrapped in a wafer-thin shell that each of my cells was programmed to self-digest. They didn't mention that within the cocoon of motherhood was a kind of caterpillar soup, a wet mess of brokenness held together by a silk thread skin. They forgot to tell me about the part where my chest would be ripped open to reveal my dissolving heart, in the park, at the supermarket, in the car, as I peered through stewed tears and scrabbled at 1,000 jigsaw pieces, each to be placed without the picture box to guide me. And finally, they forgot to tell me about the imaginal discs, that, in fact, they're all that is left. In the hinterland between caterpillar soup and sky, the imaginal discs survive, dining on a dish of pupil gloop, keeping what is needed and eating what is not. They divide again and again and again, now 2,000, now 10,000, now 1,000,000 microscopic pieces, and they know. They just know how and where they should grow, the long chambered heart and the limbs and the wings, all woven together from the waters of remembering, pushing at skin. Nobody told me that I would crawl out from the chrysalis of motherhood, crumpled, with soft underbelly exposed, wet and heavy, eventually. That I would be upside down when I began to move again, and that I would use the meconium of motherhood to strengthen my wings, that I would watch them unfurl, full, powerful, sturdy enough to carry me, as sky high I shed the dregs of what is no longer necessary, effortlessly and full of grace, each piece now perfectly in its place.